Okay, so this is another short video on user experience or humanity-centered design processes. This is video 4 of 4. Obviously, there's been plenty of activities for you to sort of follow through. So at this point, we're going to talk through some ways that you might take some of those thoughts you've had, the assumptions you might have mapped, the people that you're thinking, perhaps the journeys they're going to be doing, and how you might then use the final sort of part in this instance of design thinking, which is prototyping and iterating. So this is key. You will be doing this throughout those initial phases, but of course, if you're designing something for someone to interact with, you need to prototype that interaction and test it and iterate it. And this might be through lots and lots of processes. So again, the key thing to remember is it's never finished. And so this process goes on and on. So, you make something, you test it, you then reflect upon that, and you plan the next phase of make, test, reflect. Plan, make, test, reflect. And this is an ongoing cycle. So some of these will obviously slow down as the product gets more and more finessed. Sometimes they'll speed up. Something external to the activities you're undertaking may have a big impact on how you might need to think about iterating and prototyping. So the other thing is you can do various methods. So the first thing though to think about is to keep it really low fidelity. So really ensure that you're testing things as soon as possible. Think about the minimum viable product that you could create to test your design interaction. That's really important. We talked earlier in the videos about Dropbox. They didn't build Dropbox before they tested their biggest assumption. They just built a sign-up page because they could do that. Now, again, it's just thinking about what's the lowest barrier for you to test out those things and find out how your users might interact with something. Yeah. So if you want to create, any sort of product, think about how do I do this for what's called a minimum viable product. So how do I test that piece? And it might be split things up, make it into a smaller interaction and just test that one piece and then slowly build up. Obviously, you've got to think about the entire user journey. So a great way of doing this is obviously paper prototyping. So taking your idea and using sheets of paper to present that. This is particularly important when it comes to sort of user interface design for devices. Remember, user experience design is not a process just for creating user interfaces, but when you're creating an interface or an app for an iPhone or a smart device, the tendency is to jump onto the computer and think, well, I'm just going to start designing or start making icons and screens and bits and pieces. But that is a lot of work. It will often require a designer itself, when actually you could test those interactions through, just a piece of paper. Yeah. The other thing that's really important with this kind of stuff is that in this instance, when you're testing, if you get a few people engaged with testing that product, then what you can do is you can become the computer. Yeah. So in this instance, if you wanted to test out, a voice interaction and you wanted to test out a new way that Siri might engage with, recipe details and expanding those to the user, you don't need to build a whole API to connect to Siri. You could behave as Siri does and provide the responses based on the content that you've got. So again, it's just trying to think about how you might do that. Yeah. If, I do a lot of work where we're teaching games design, and that is a highly complex process in terms of coding, assets, etc. Some of the easiest way to get across the idea, though, is to get a sheet of paper, get another object, and that object becomes the player. One of the people in that space can then be the computer. So if I want to move you left or right, then the computer, the other person in the testing environment, moves that object left or right and can see whether that interaction is going to work in the way that's expected. So that is a really great thing to think about. How could I test this through paper prototyping as a minimum viable product? Yeah, and allow the user to just go through those processes and see how it works for them. The other thing to do is think about rapid prototyping. So how can you do something to test a number of things? Now, the best way to do is just to get an idea out there, try it out, and then adapt it, change it as things are coming in, make some notes, take some feedback, and then adapt. So Lego have a whole thing called Lego Serious Play, which is a methodology of innovation designed like around actually enhancing innovation and business performance. So they kind of get hands-on, they build some things, it helps you to think about the idea and solution in lots and lots of different ways, and also opens up lots and lots of possibilities. So again, this kind of serious play methodology enables businesses and people who are less, design orientated to engage in thinking about how they might solve different problems or understanding things in a meaningful way. Another one I've seen more recently that Kate Langham has designed, who is this tool called Play as a Design Tool, is a whole thing that Kate Langham's been working on related to a recent PhD. And what she's done here is use the ability to actually create landscapes, outdoor landscapes through cakes. So she gets members of the public to utilize cakes to imagine new spaces. So if the council are redesigning a space in the local area or in London that's going to as a play park or whatever, often there's lots of people who want to get involved in that process and discuss it. But what can be quite intimidating is these types of drawings. If you're not a designer, you won't necessarily want to engage with how do you move these things around, how do you play with these things, how do you actually understand it. Whereas when it's dropped down into this kind of level of it just being playful, and particularly in this instance she uses cakes to engage with that play, that loads and loads more people get involved in the design process, and those processes then are translated by architects into drawings based on the kind of original processes that the people who are actually going to be involved use, which is great. So there's loads of ways that you can do this: rapid prototyping, paper prototyping, those kind of things. The next phase, particularly if you're designing a series of screen-based interactions, is to think about, well, how do I get that interaction on screen to be tested? Maybe the paper prototyping work quite well, but that's limited because you can only deploy that locally, but you want to get a wider audience base. So there is a bunch of great apps out there that can really help. So Marvel app and also the blog is a really great resource, allows you to take photographs or illustrated files and connect them together into a series of interactions that can have some of those kind of default iOS swipes and those kind of things. So that's something maybe to look at, is the Marvel app, which allows you to, you can just take photos of your paper prototype, and then in the web-based interface you can just connect those things together, and you can get it also as an app on iPhone and Android. InVision have been doing a lot of work in this space as well, and they have very similar tools, and they're just bringing out some new tools in 2018 that will do even more so. And if you are particularly interested in undertaking sort of UI approaches and then putting them through this user experience testing and design thinking methodology, Sketch is a fantastic app that's well worth checking out because it integrates directly with the services such as Marvel and InVision. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at some quick examples of where we might think about human interaction and how those design choices could be changed. There's a great book that I recommend everyone takes a look at if they're really interested in helping humans to navigate the world through design thinking and good user experience. Is this book by Don Norman called The Design of Everyday Things. As you can see there, the cover illustrates the impossible teapot which will burn you if you try to actually make a cup of tea. So Don is well known for these doors that do not give you any kind of clue as to their affordance. So this is something really to think about. So we see here a push or pull handle, but it is not clear necessarily from this door because there is a handle on the other side whether you are to push or pull it. So this can be pretty frustrating obviously for individuals because the affordance tells you one thing and yet the experience hasn't been thought through. So there's been nothing here thought about the user's journey in any shape or form, and how he's actually going to engage with what he's seeing as he comes out from this dark space into a light space. Here's another example. again, just thinking about small little things, you know, insert the card into the card machine. Yet if we were to take our debit or credit cards out of our pocket, we would notice that the chip is never in that position, which may confuse the user into putting the card into the machine the wrong way, which is a frustrating interaction. This one I liked a lot. So this example here is obviously turning on the radiators in a house, which appears pretty complicated, but actually is pretty straightforward. What you need to do is activate the top hat to go up the ladder to set the train tracks on fire, and then the radiators will come on. If you didn't understand that, then obviously perhaps you want to press the button that looks like a squashed frog, which might actually reboot the entire system. So nothing on here indicates anything to do with how you would actually get the radiators on. The top hat ladder system is very, very strange. So again, it's just thinking about how someone might go through the journey and what they're expected to do. What are the processes? How do you actually make this work? So to wrap up, I'm going to give you one final example to show you the difference between a great user experience that's been thought about and a terrible user experience. And it involves all the things that we've talked about, which is about, you know, thinking about how people are going to engage with your service, your product, mapping out those assumptions. Who are those people? What are their personas? What's the journey that they're going to undertake? What are the interactions that are grouped together? What's the, you know, what are their feelings and their motivations to getting to the end of the service or the goal that you or they want to achieve? So in this instance, this is just looking at the an example of getting from station A to station B, and this is looking at an airport, which is at station A, and the town, which is at station B. In this instance, for both of the journeys that we're going to show, there was no other destinations. There was a single train station that went to a single destination. So on arriving and landing in another country, in one country, users were presented with this machine, which, remember, is just to get you a ticket to one location. This machine has a lot of instructions on it that don't necessarily make sense as to where they are and what bits you're supposed to be pressing, because the layout is not particularly fantastic. I don't know where that second set of buttons are that he's tapping on. I'm guessing it's the screen, but it's difficult to tell because it doesn't look like that. And then, of course, we've got the ticket goes in, or the money comes out, and something comes out of the, looks like a tongue poking out of the monster, which is a bit strange. So also on this machine is the credit cards that are accepted, but for some unknown reason, rather than just showing the ones that are accepted, there is a little asterisk to show you the ones that are not accepted. So that may be confusing, because you might just look at it and think, oh great, my card's on there. And of course you've got to look for the asterisk, so that adds a little bit. There's a telephone to call for help. If you design an interface or a journey that requires a telephone for help, you have probably messed up the machine that you're trying to use. So there's a lot of arrows, a lot of confusing instructions, and if everything goes wrong, you can phone someone. A lot of that is not helping the person. They're going to feel super frustrated, and of course it's not a great user experience. And also you're kind of, you know, wasting a lot of time and energy through probably all these help phone calls. So same journey, same type of journey, totally different user experience. So in this location, there is a machine whose affordance is pretty obvious. There is one instruction on there which shows you how to use the machine pretty clearly, putting your card the way around. I mean, the machine kind of tells you that. When you look at it, it gives away a lot of its affordance, but there's this one sticker here that allows you to swipe your card through the machine, and then this is a person interacting with that. So he just swipes and carries on in his journey. So real straightforward, Same process, but we can see here, this is one interaction. So this guy feels great, feels like he's Superman, yeah? And so we want in our processes to not have that level of frustration, to really think about how do we empower that person to feel, like a Superman, Superwoman, to get that great feeling they've done something amazing. And that's what user experience design is all about, just providing a great feeling for those people. So this is what is called the user experience pyramid, and something to think about and not to go in too much detail now. This is based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There are a few issues with using that kind of a connection, but I think the ability to think about it through these processes where we get to something that is really meaningful for a user's experience is that we have to build from this bottom layer up. And so by applying that design thinking, we can quickly get over that convenient chasm, which ensures that our products on our services provide not just a convenient, not just a pleasurable, but also a meaningful interaction. Yeah, so Sturgeon's law talks about 90% of everything being rubbish, and of course that 90% tends to sit at the bottom here with functional, reliable, usable. If we want to create something that's super meaningful and super well designed, we need to think about our user experience. Okay, so that was the last of those 4 connected short videos. Here's a few people that are worth looking up in connection specifically just with user experience design and some of the people we've touched on. So I hope that has been a useful series.